black belt in Taekwondo. So, I better be careful. Now, if you don't get my humor today, I'll be really embarrassed, because I intend to talk about and hear some of these great stories from the last 48 years. And I relish these wonderful pictures that Kendra has put together. Some of them I don't remember ever seeing before, but they sure are good. I told somebody one time, they said, well, well, I got a picture back when I was young, and that was kind of cute. Well, I got a picture of Linda. She was always cute. Well, the first thing I remember knowing about her was, now let's just say, I knew about her long before I was introduced, because I was on the leadership committee of a Bible study at Preston Road Church, and somebody said something about this school teacher from Louisville. And I said, well, why don't you let me have her phone number? And I had her phone number. Then, as luck would have it, she was running away from somebody and came and sat down beside me, and I was sitting in the windowsill. There was no room for anybody else, and there she was. Delivered to my life by accident. I started talking to her. In between hootenanny things we were doing back then at the youth fellowship. And I told her, well, I'm a bad guy. I've been in jail. I'm going through it, all of this kind of stuff. I didn't tell her much else. But then I said, can I walk you home? And I took her to her dorm and kissed her goodnight. The rest is history. I remember there's a song, something about a kiss. And I'm not going to get too personal about that, but sometimes it just happens. And for her, it just happened. For me, it just happened. And we've really never been apart since. She didn't know that I was the preacher for the service next morning, so it was kind of shocking to see that guy I just kissed up there preaching. But that wasn't the last kiss. In fact, I was telling somebody my contribution to this service is the day before she died. I bent over, just like she was here in the casket, put my cheek next to her cheek, and she pursed her lips, ready to give. Ready to receive a kiss. And the next, about 24 hours later, she was gone. But from first kiss to last, we loved each other so. Since she was a perfectionist, she was disappointed in a lot of things I did and didn't do and should have done. But her lips were always ready for that kiss. We will hear from Joshua Ethan Ulrich, and then we'll hear a wonderful, wonderful song.
George Masson and Benita Piker Masson in Sulphur Springs, Texas. She graduated from Sulphur Bluff High School as valedictorian before going to North Texas State for a bachelor's degree. Linda married Werner Warwick on November 24, 1972. In addition to being a devoted wife and mother, Linda went on to complete both her master's and doctorate at East Texas A&M University, while working as a teacher in Garland ISD, where she was voted as Teacher of the Year before serving as an elementary school principal until her retirement. She was a faithful member of the Church of Christ. Then in 1998, Linda began her favorite job of parent to her grandchildren. They were the light of her life, just as she was for them. She is survived by her husband, Werner, of Garland, Texas, daughter Kendra Cordhauer of Vernon, Texas, sons Jonathan Ark and wife Jennifer of Vernon, Texas, Jason Ark and wife Dottie of Garland, Texas, and Lucas Ulrich of Garland, Texas. Siblings Michael Masson and wife Peggy of Sulphur Springs, Texas, Carolyn Freeman and husband Jimmy of Royce City, Texas, and Sharon Reinmuth and husband Mike of Fairview, Texas. Grandchildren Corrigan, Keegan, and Karis Cordhauer of Brandon, Texas, and Joshua Orr of Great Bend, Texas, as
4 children, and we're going to share a good memory. And if we want to go by age, we start with Luke, and then the rest of you know where you belong. And share if you want to. Nobody has to, but we've got some stories. One story I got thinking about was before we got married, and actually to finish the story I started, the young people had, the youth group had a Tuesday evening volleyball time, and before I got there a little early, and there she was already there. And so I said, well, there's the basketball, let's shoot a few hoops, play a little horse. Well, I knew she looked athletic, but who could have predicted that she would hit 8 throws from the top of the key? Well, I think my Jonathan got her ability at free throws. I remember seeing him get 40-something in a row before he missed. Never got to 10, I don't think. Anyway, each of my children will share something good, and maybe they'll pique up a memory in my mind too. Luke.
Good morning. I guess funerals are a time to reflect on the stories in people's lives and to share with one another. And this week, when I was thinking about what I wanted to share and what was most meaningful between my mom and I thought about those stories, and I thought, you know what? Those are none of your business. And then I thought, well, I have to share something, right? I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a genetic trait. There's something beautiful about having something with somebody else that's just y'all's, and nobody else will ever know about it. So I'm going to keep those between my mom and I. But I do have a story. I went home from grad school one weekend, and I sat down and we were sitting together with each other watching TV, and there was some type of cop show. It was probably Cops, and we were watching because one of the police officers did something dumb, and I looked at it and I said something disparaging about the education of police officers, something I probably shouldn't have said, and then my mom turned to me, and there's only a couple of times in my life that I remember my mom actually getting angry with me. And she looked at me and she said, you don't know these people. You don't know what they know. You don't know what they've been through. And I thought about this week, and I thought, you really understand who somebody is when you see the areas where they get angry. She didn't really get angry about things about herself, but when she saw somebody else getting hurt, that made her angry. Most of us, like me, most of our anger arises when we feel somebody did something against us. We have a selfish bone to us. I remember walking into her principal's office, and on the plaque on the wall was a motto that she loved, and the motto was, I believed that my students could, so then they believed that they could. And that's the way that she saw herself. She was connected to everybody. She could influence everybody. And even in the last years, when she got really sick. You could feel it when we got together as a family. That light in the room that brought everybody together wasn't there. The energy that she always brought, the connection she always brought between us all, it was missing. In the last months of my mother's life, I used to bring her hot water every day. It's what she loved. Hot water every single day, and I would bring it to her, and I would give it to her, and eventually she was a good one, she couldn't hold it. I had to help her drink it. She probably didn't know who it was that was serving her the water. She most likely didn't know where she was. And I could do that with her every day, and every day she made the same noise. She's like, "Ooh, love that water. Woo!" And I just started thinking, I was like, why does she love this water? What is it about the water that she likes so much? And then, of course, that's just me thinking like a selfish person would think. Because she wasn't doing it for me. She was doing it for me. She was letting me know and spreading love in a time where she was lost. She didn't know where she was. And even to somebody that was a stranger in her house, she wanted to make them feel comfortable, and she wanted to spread love out. All I know is that my mom was a beautiful, caring, loving woman, and the world will be a little less beautiful without her.
Good.
Well, I'm glad that my story didn't get stolen, because those were all things that I didn't even know about before today. I get to interact with my mom on a little different level than some people, being in public education, having her as a parent. And so I've gotten to see a different side of her than some other people have, and have different conversations than other people have, just geared toward that. And I think starting out in teaching, I don't think I would have made it without being able to talk to her about some of the things that had gone on with me those first couple of years before she retired. But even before that, I figured out a long time ago that not every parent is the same. And especially when you deal with children and deal with their parents, you realize very quickly that not everybody deals with their children the same way. Growing up in a house with 3 boys, each 2 years apart, we got into a lot of trouble, or at least what we thought was trouble. Jumping off the roof into the pool, breaking things in the house as we decided to clear out the furniture from our room and have a rousing game of hockey when the parents weren't home. Making sure, of course, to quit early enough that we could get all the furniture back in and make sure it looked like nothing had happened. But when things broke, there's no hiding that. Although we did manage to glue that back together, and it didn't get found for a couple of years with the chips missing from the back of it, because we turned it properly to hide that. But for me personally, in high school, got into a little bit of trouble because, as you know, a teenager is going to get into some trouble, but in my case it was a little more inventive. We had full administrative access to the entire network for the district and managed to get into a little bit of trouble. Printed some interesting messages to the brand new high school onto their printers that now I teach at, which is even more interesting. And mostly we play video games. We had a master key to open every door in the building in the school. And so we would often stay up at the school until 6 or 7 at night playing video games with each other because we could get into the computer lab that nobody used. and play those games. And in fact, some of the games that we couldn't play, we actually brought computer parts to upgrade the computers so that they would actually run. Now, not trouble that you would normally think of a teenager getting into, but we certainly thought we were getting away with a lot. Until, of course, we got caught. Now, of course, the administration of the building thought that we were trying to change grades or do something more nefarious than that. We were just playing video games. And so, even in the midst of threats of expulsion and suspension and things of that nature, they didn't have any evidence that we were doing anything against the rules. Because we weren't. Technically, we were, doing a lot of things that we weren't supposed to be doing ethically, but nothing specifically against the rules, which ended up causing an entire district-wide change in policy, and that every student in the district has to sign a form now. So, for them, you're welcome. But we did get caught. They did find out that we had access, and I don't think they ever knew that we had a master key, which had gotten copied so much that I think there were about a dozen of us that had that master key by the end. But when we did get caught, the administration called my mom, and unlike some parents I've seen as a teacher who, if they get sent to the office, they actually manage to get to the school and in the office before their child does. My mom told the administrator that if he didn't, give him whatever punishment he deserves. And to me, that stands out in my mind more than anything else my mom ever did. Is that we were going to get punished, and that was fine, because that's how you learn your lesson. You take the consequences of your actions. And I think that has been her philosophy as a mother and an educator, more than anything else. Whatever happens, you get to accept the consequences of your actions, whether it's good or bad. And I think in my case, it's very obvious that my life was different from that point on. I realized what it was she was trying to do all those years in punishing us. My parents did spank us. That was fairly normal at the time. And even though some of us figured out that if you found a nice paperback book and put it into the back of your pants, it kind of nullified that particular punishment, unless, of course, their aim was bad and managed to catch you on a leg, in which case it still did hurt some. But rather than avoiding punishment, now I think that was exactly what I needed, exactly what I got. And it's what made my mother such a great parent and a great educator, and exactly what I wanted to be in my life, which is why I got into education. It was just so I could be at least a little bit like her. Now, obviously, I haven't won Teacher of the Year in my building. I certainly, unlike her, haven't won Teacher of the Year for the entire district in one of the largest districts in the state. But I hope someday I can become at least a little bit of the person that she was in life.
I sure am glad she never had to deal with me and any of those issues like that. And I appreciate your admissions this morning, Jason. And that those are locked on tape forevermore. I'm glad to see you corrected that and gotten to this place today. Thank you all for being here. This is tough. The final act wasn't the script we wanted. most times when that script starts to look too much like ours, we forget the important one is his. He brought her to the final resting place. He brought her home. No more tears, no more pain, no more suffering. I can only imagine that her smile and laugh are more glorious than ever. Her sense of humor has returned. Her first order of business was probably to deliver a gift of matching sweaters to Jesus and the 12. That Last Supper photo now has some real potential. Mom lived a life of purpose, both personally and professionally. She had a strong work ethic, an unbelievable work ethic. She fueled a life of incredible accomplishment. She had a number of personal accomplishments that we were very proud of. But the accomplishments she was the most proud of were those of her kids, her grandkids, her students, her other kids, and her teachers. She had a servant heart. She used to work really long hours at the school. She wanted everything to be just right. She was a perfectionist. She would come home physically exhausted, but it didn't stop her from being present with her family. I wanted to share a couple of my favorite stories about my mom. I don't know if she would let me share these if she were alive. I don't know if many of you have even heard these, but I wanted to share these this morning. The first was when she was at a teacher's conference down in Austin. My mom went out on the town one evening with some of her teachers to a little place called 6th Street. For whatever reason, they compromised on a place featuring a rock band. Now, for those of you that don't know my mom's music playlist, getting outside the box might involve the country side of Alan Jackson's album instead of the gospel side. I think you heard a little bit of that this morning. According to her, the lead singer maintained a regular banter with the audience. She said at first he was very interested in whether everyone was having a good time. The problem was, instead of asking in the British way with a please and tea, he always felt the need to add a number of choice adjectives and expletives to the question. Mom tried so hard to let that go. I don't think she wanted to spoil the outing for the rest of her colleagues. But the colorful language started to wear on her. Later that evening, the singer made a key mistake. Instead of sticking with the safer rhetorical questions, he started asking the audience if anyone had a problem with what he was saying, with those special adjectives and expletives added. Now, I don't think this young man was looking for an audience reaction, any audience participation. He had probably done this hundreds of times without any reaction other than applause. This is probably right out of the Iron Maiden playbook. But Linda Ulrich decided she was going to approach the stage. She got up there and she raised her hand like she was in school, ready to be called upon. Of course, like everyone does at a concert when they want to get called on. Waiting for this inspiring musician to call on her. And he did. And my mom let him know in no uncertain terms that she had heard enough of what he was saying, and she didn't appreciate the language he was using, And she was leaving. And she did. Wow. The second story, ironically, is set in Austin. My mom was down for a visit to see her grandson, Josh. Toward the end of the visit, we had plans one evening to attend a Sweet 16 party for one of Jennifer's cousins. These are very, very big events with dresses and catering and dancing. It's a lot like a wedding. It's pretty amazing, actually. I never thought Mom would really be interested. I really thought at that moment she was going to cut her visit short and head home. But in typical Nana style, she said she didn't mind. She wasn't going to let anybody steal those precious moments with her grandson. When we arrived, I made sure to strategically take a table as far away as possible. I knew there was going to be loud music. I knew it was going to get raucous. I wanted to make sure she had a place so she could spend some quiet time with her grandson. But that's not what happened. The first time I turned around and looked for her, she was gone, and Josh was gone. She had put Josh on her hip, and now she was working the room. There were people in there that she hadn't met before, and she didn't know. I scanned the room. I thought for a second, I really thought maybe she got a taxi, and headed back. This was too much, but it's never too much when it's family. As the night went on, the music was now the main feature, and it was loud. We were moving closer to the dance floor. We were all together. Children and young adults were out there line dancing to the latest music. For sure, she was now going to ask, "Are you guys ready to go? It's getting late. Are you tired?" Maybe she'd want to go home and listen to a good Elvis Christmas CD at a low volume. Get some extra sleep. But that's not what happened. It was between songs, and the volume was down. You could actually hear a conversation now if you needed to. And off to the side, we heard somebody singing. And then you heard a little more singing. And Jennifer and I had discovered just about the same time that that's Nana over there singing, and we kind of caught our attention and couldn't believe this was occurring. And she was not only was she picking up on that music, there was some level of memorization going on. For about the next 30 seconds, we heard her recite word for word the chorus to the Stanky Leg. Can't get it out of your mind. I don't know what I would have done if I saw her put her leg out. You just can't unsee those things. But for her, she was fitting in and having a good time. That's who she was. She sure was special. I'm sure going to miss her. Thank you.
Well, since all of my brothers have gotten to have their say, I'm going to register first. How completely unfair it is. We did this the wrong way, and I have to go last and not first. Because I told them yesterday I was going to have to come up with 4 versions of what I wanted to say in case they stole my lines. But Jason told me to just write down all 4 and give them each one to say, and we can go from there. But we can stand here all day and tell stories about Mom. She gave us great ones. For years and years, I laughed at her because when we went to the Grand Canyon, we couldn't look over the edge because she thought we would fall in. And I laughed, and then I had children, and I had to call her and apologize. because now I understood. And we've got tons of stories about children, about Nana showing up for plays and concerts and programs, from the little bitty 2 and 3 year old programs on up to high school. She was there every time. But other than the running commentary she would give me about things she observed, and I kind of do the same thing, she watched my entire C-section and told me what they were doing, like I didn't know. The biggest thing I remember is how she could see potential. Mom could see potential in a love seat that needed to be recovered, or in a bathroom that she wanted to redo. But mostly she saw potential in people. And that's why she would get so mad when we didn't live up to whatever her potential was that she thought you could do. She saw potential in everybody, and that's why everybody wanted to see her and talk to her and give her advice and get her critique, because she would be completely, brutally honest that she knew your potential. And so I just hope that someday my children see that manifestation in me.
We are ready for anyone else that has a story that they could tell. Brothers, sisters, friends, cousins, nephews, nieces. If you have a story and you want to tell it, come on up. Look at that. The sweet Nancy approaches.
The last week or so has been a really dark week. The weather has been, well, as we all know, unbelievable, and dark and challenging. And I just remember how many times I looked out my window and it's just cloudy, dark. But last week, there was another reason that this place got a little darker. A light went out. Luke mentioned that. A light went out. I've known Linda for many, many years, Werner and Linda. For many years, we were friends before we became sisters-in-law. Many years ago, we started having kids at the same time. We stopped at 2. They kept on going, and as I've reflected on Linda, and especially after hearing from you kids, there was not a better person in the world to have as many kids as she wanted to have, because she was that kind of mother. I would have given my kids to her in a heartbeat, because that's how I felt about her. The light has grown dimmer. The light grew dimmer the last few years. And we rejoice at the freedom that she's now enjoying, and the peace, and no more pain and no more suffering, and making sweaters for the guys. And we rejoice in the knowledge and the faith that we have that that is where she is. But for us left here, the light has gone out.
Thank you, sweetie.
doing belt testing for, I think I was going for senior wardrobe. She was there watching me in the stands while I'm trying to advance to my next ring. And I remember she would always when she was over, or when I went over to her house, she would always love chicken nuggets. And when my dad and my mom got me McDonald's, even if I gave her one fry, she would be thankful. Or she would take half of my meal. But she was always grateful for anything she could get. From one fry to just watching her grandkids or anyone succeed in anything. And I had a belt testing this week going for my black belt, and it was a couple days after she died, and I just remember that I wanted to do anything and everything I could to just show her that, I wanted to be someone that she was. She was always amazing to everyone, even my dad and my mom. And my dad was saying that she was always hard on people if they didn't live up to their capability. But I think my dad is really good at doing what he does, and being a parent, and my mom too. And they're living up to what I think Nana would say they would be able to live up to. And yeah.
You go, buddy. Did I see another hand? Good talk. Amen.
This woman was one of the greatest grandmothers on this planet. Going to Nana and Grandpa's house, she really knew how to make it Nana and Grandpa's house. That was the place we could go to hang out, play video games, watch TV. And she was always very energetic and welcoming and kind. I remember when she would come visit us, she would always be in the yard pulling weed. You're visiting, you can relax. One of the things that I really wish I'd been able to do as I had gotten older was talk to her more. As I went through high school and she would come see shows, like my mother mentioned. Well, one moment that really stuck out to me was on the drive home when she would look out the window and just ask, "Where am I?" And just, I don't know, that moment hit me a lot as, well, that I'm going to miss her a lot, and from what I've heard about her through stories, it's really going to help me remember her more of who she was when she was younger, and the same strength she had, and her loving heart. I'm really going to miss it.
Thank you. You can tell one story if there's anybody else thinking about it. A Linda story. Long before I met her, John Wayne was in this area, and she came to town and was there for the parade. And John Wayne was on a float, and she said, "I'm going to go get his autograph." And so, being as athletic as she was, she could run fast enough to do that. By the way, did you know that she used to race her 5th grade boys every year and whip them every time? Anyway, she finally ran fast enough to get up on that float. And she asked John Wayne for his autograph. And he said to her, "Little lady, if I was to give you an autograph, there'd be a stampede." So I didn't give her one. And she hated John Wayne the first couple of years of our marriage. I mean, that was very much of a rejection. And we went and watched his Academy Award performance that most people know well. And she kind of fell in love. So the last 20 years, we probably watched just about every one of John Wayne movies, many of them twice. As somebody said, you know, if you keep telling Nana stories, one of my grandkids said one time, somebody asked him, "What's heaven like?" I said, "Well, it's kind of like going to Grandpa Nana's house." I'll sit with you if you're a grandpa. I love my grandkids. So proud of my kids. So proud of the choices they've made and the work ethic they've had. It's like I was talking to the real Camille and told her that, you know what I said to my kids when they went to work? You do the things that you're supposed to do and then a little bit more. You'll never be lacking for a job. Well, mostly that's true. But when it's not true, Nana was there to help. Because there's not every kid that has the personality that you're looking for. And my kids have all the personalities going. And if you needed her in your corner, and she was there. She never wanted to be a preacher's wife. Well, good luck, Linda. Dr. Ulrich. You know, I didn't think she would ever enjoy being called Dr. Ulrich until I went up to the school and everybody came up and said, "Dr. Ulrich, Dr. Ulrich." And it's like, it didn't matter to them that it was a title. They felt like she was a friend. And she knew everybody. I ran into my dentist's office, and the secretary said, "Ulrich, do you know Dr. Ulrich?" I said, "Well, yeah, we've been married 30 years, or whatever it was at that point." Well, my kids just loved her, and it just totally changed their school attitude. Yeah, teacher of the year, she still got the little apple there, and whatever, what a wonderful surprise that was. Teacher of the year. As an administrator, there were a lot of struggles that she was given. A couple of the most impossible places. And I'll close with this story. She was the assistant principal over at Cub Hill. Sweet people, wonderful, supportive parents. But there was one frustration she had. And that there was this young girl that was seen everywhere she went. And she thought, well, you know, she said, "Why don't you into the gifted talent?" And she said, "I'm trying to. But I don't seem to get much response from them." Well, she had a country voice. And she did not get into the gifted talent. But Linda was an encouragement to that whole family. And just a couple of years later, one song. The end. Rise. And you just get thinking, how many other stories are there out there that won't ever get told because we don't run into those people enough. But every time I run into somebody, I was sitting at Taco Bueno, and somebody came over and said, "Are you Dr. Ulrich?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, you don't know me, but my granddaughter had her whole life changed. Well, I guess one of these days you could be hanging around, and I'll be laying in the casket. I hope there's a couple of good stories there, other than the fact that, you know, he was in jail one time. And he used to love bourbon. I can't wait. I've got one more story. On the way from Canada here, I was looked at by several doctors. You know, they did this, did that, and I had to swear to support the government and do all these things. And it was quite a deal. It was a questionnaire with 400 questions in it. It was worse than Minnesota, for those of you who are in psychology. And the doctor said to me, "Well, sir, I hate to tell you this, but you're never going to father any children." And I went to a doctor down here, you know, had to have a physical for something. He said, "Well, sir, I hate to tell you, but you're never going to father any children." 4 different doctors. Well, we got married. Just to be safe, since Linda was teaching school, she went on the pill. Well, that's kind of funny. It's, you know, why go on the pill when somebody can't even father children? But sooner or later, we decided, well, we're going to move to Canada and preach in Winnipeg. So she went off the pill. The doctor said, "Don't worry about it. When you've been on the pill this long, even if you could have children, it's not going to be anywhere from 6 to 9 months." Well, as I have said since, as long as we're in the same room, she started swelling in the belly. And she did. And Kendra was born. Then they said, "No, you don't have to worry about birth control while you're nursing." And a few months later, she was pregnant. Actually, her milk was drying up, and so she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Well, let me check this." And he said, "Hey, you're pregnant." But he said, "I can't be pregnant, I'm nursing." So Jonathan was born. Well, we have 4 stories, and I'm not going to tell them all. Then we had 4 kids. Then she got tombstone. She didn't want to have any more kids. 4 kids from 75 to 80. And the father, we don't know who the father is yet, because obviously I can't father any children. I said, "Yeah, I can't father any children unless we're probably in close proximity in the same room." And she'll be pregnant. Well, let me do this. We're gonna have a closing prayer. We'll have one more song, and then we'll have the viewing, and we'll be done. Thank you so much. Abba, thank you for the gift to my life from the wonderful Dr. Linda Susan Baskin Ulrich. She was very popular, dated a lot of boys. But I got her. I jingled, I kept her. I loved her, and I love her still. Thank you for that gift and your great blessing. All right. That everything we tried seemed to work out. We struggled with things, but we were loving and close on the day she died. I know she's safe. I know she's well. And she is happy out of her mind. In Jesus' name, amen.
If I surveyed all the good things come to me from above, if I count all the blessings from the storehouse of love, I simply ask for a favor of Him beyond mortal pain, and I'm sure that He grant it again. I want to stroll over heaven with you some glad day, when all our troubles and heartaches are vanished away. Then we'll enjoy the beauty where all things are new. I want to stroll over heaven with you.
Oh,